Hello world! Today I thought it'd be a good time in the semester to go over how to do readings for your classes. Yeah, I know it sounds a little elementary, everybody is assumed to know how to read, but it's a specific art to reading for university classes because I don't think anyone is expecting you to read every single word line by line to perfection. And there's a lot of tricks and tips as to how to actually finish all of your readings on time without tiring yourself out too much. I, for one, never got those tricks and tips taught to me very clearly, and so I thought I'd make this video not as an authority on how to do readings, but just as a couple of tips that I learned from hitting walls and going through my own experience in university. Warning, this is just a guide for readings in the humanities and a little bit of the social sciences. I have no idea what readings look like in other areas, so this isn't meant to be an all-encompassing guide for university readings. But if you find any of the tips helpful, please let me know. I'd love to learn more about how other areas operate. Okay, and so with that, let's get started with the social sciences. I only went up to a bachelor's degree. That's really weird to say. I only went up to. But I got a bachelor's degree in psychology, so I don't know what the grad school level looks like. But from my own experience, the social sciences have two types of readings: textbooks and peer-reviewed articles. I'm starting with what, for me, takes the least amount of time and the most amount of active effort. In a psychology article like this one I have here, there are several commonly found sections: the abstract, the introduction, the methods section, the results section, and the discussion. This is how the article presents the info to me, but here's how I actually go through it: the abstract first, then the discussion, then back up to the introduction, and finally to the methods and results section. I read the abstract first because all of the most important points are going to be in the abstract, so I can just jot down 1 to 2 lines of summary in my notes to understand the general findings so I don't lose the most important ideas from the article. For me, the most important point is actually this third point here. So mortality salience condition displayed stronger in-group identification, perceived greater in-group entitativity, and scored higher on in-group bias measures. So that's an obvious result of the study in that mortality salience, so a group that had mortality on their mind, displayed higher levels of these following measures. These measures also have a mediation effect. Some effects or some higher measures are dependent on other higher measures. So overall, it's not super important that we understand what these things are yet, especially if you're not in social sciences. This really doesn't matter, but it just goes to show how much information is in the abstract that you can get right off the bat. So then I go down to the discussion section. The first few lines of the discussion section usually puts the results into simple English rather than data and statistics, and oftentimes just repeats some of the abstract but in a more detailed and systematic way. Then I go into the introduction to get the background. Now, this is realistically where I start to drop off if I feel like I don't have to read the reading in that much detail. If there's like 5 articles and a chapter for that week, I'm probably not going to be reading the introduction, methods, and results sections. It'll always be there if I'm wanting to cite the article in future research. The methods section is there so future research can see what was done and how to do something similar. And the results section is something pretty similar before the data analysis part of everything. In my experience, the background stuff in the introduction is usually covered in the lecture or in the textbook reading. So again, if pressed for time or if you have a lot to get through, I'd say knowing the specific contributions of the article itself, i.e. the findings in the abstract and the discussion, is more important than knowing how the article is situating itself in other topics. And that's it. I think these types of articles are good at teaching you how to use subtitles to guide your reading, to extract key points, and to not get lost in verbiage. The lesson from textbooks is kind of similar, but just sustained on a longer scale. I'm still in the mindset of reading for key points in textbooks, but there's a little more info under every subtitle or section. Textbooks are usually very helpful in that they highlight the keywords that are most important. So look for italics, bolding, underlining, different colors, and special sections to see what the main points are. I also tend to read immediately before and after these points in order to not only get their definition, but also to get any extra info involved. If there aren't any highlighting, usually the first sentence of each paragraph is a good summary of the whole paragraph's idea. What I found in a lot of psychology textbooks is that the main point was in the topic sentence and the rest of the paragraph were examples. Examples are important, again, if you want to be writing a paper that requires you to know the area in more detail. But if it's a week-to-week textbook reading, I'd say just jotting down the ideas in the first sentence or two and skimming the rest of the paragraph will make sure that you're not missing anything too major later on. So here I have kind of an open source textbook about early history of psychology. Empiricism here is in a different color, so I know it's important. I'm skimming for words, so John Locke, Thomas Reid, and you get a little bit of the time frame that they're working with. Then usually the definition follows. So empiricism, the idea that all knowledge comes from experience. So that's something worth jotting down in my notes. The main idea of empiricism from experience, human observer, primacy of the senses, those are kind of important points in that paragraph. So I'm not going to go over any more of this chapter, but I hope that little tiny bit helped show how I look first for the keywords and then I'm just reading keywords around those keywords and definitions around those keywords. Now, some of what we just went through is skimming. And what the hell is skimming? For the longest time, I didn't get it. And for all I know, I might still be doing it wrong, but this is kind of how I skim. Again, I'm no expert. I'm not sure this is exactly right, but this is just a technique that I use. So, in the process of skimming, I'm usually starting with the first sentence of the paragraph and then dropping really fast down the paragraph in order to catch keywords. If something catches my eye, I'll stop and read the whole sentence or part of that sentence in order to understand how that word is being used in the context of the full paragraph. But otherwise, it's a very quick drop and I'm just trying to get the main ideas. Once I think I know what the paragraph is about, I'll drop to the next. This kind of dropping technique works on all levels. If I think I'm about to understand a sentence, I'll quickly jump to the next one. If I think I get a paragraph, I'll go to the next one. And even if I think I know a whole page, then I'll go to the next one. Catching keywords is a good way of making sure that the writer is still on the topic that you think they're on. And if you're seeing a lot of new words popping up, I'd slow down and see what the new section is about. Now I can hear the academic purists screaming already, you're not gonna get everything, you're gonna miss points, you're not gonna actually understand the reading, blah, blah, blah. And they're right. You're not getting everything by skimming. That is 100% true. You can usually get away with it when it's a pretty straightforward idea or paper, but if it's a little more complicated of a piece, or if the writer writes as if he's screwing with you, which a lot of scholars do, skimming's going to be pretty hard. And what do you do with that? Well, you try your best to give yourself more time for the readings in case something more complex comes up, in which case you can have time to read every word. But if you don't have time for it, there's not much else you can do besides skimming. At the end of the day, skimming is better than not doing the reading at all. And so, again, this is just being realistic and seeing what techniques you can use to be the most efficient and get as much done as you can in as little time as you can. Regardless of what the content was in the first reading, in the textbook, or in this one, this video was about how I read, how I skim in particular. Finally, I wanted to emphasize that these are all just things that work for me. Again, I'm no expert, I'm just a TA and one person out of millions of students out there. I also feel like some people might think that, oh, it's not a great idea to be telling students not to do their readings in full and to understand everything and all that. And, this might give them the impression that they have a free pass when it comes to readings, that they don't have to do it. Of course, do your readings, try your best to read them in full, line by line. There's always going to be students who don't do their readings, but I also don't think that it's because of people teaching them how to skim, right? on this channel, I really just want to keep things realistic. And in my perspective, there is no way in heck you're going to be able to do all of your readings. And so it's important to prioritize and do what you can with the time that you have. Working smart over working hard, always. If you skim or extract the most basic info, you might actually get all of your readings done instead of freaking out at the last minute, not because you started too late, but because all of these readings are just taking longer than you think they would. So keep it realistic. Don't expect to do all of your readings in a night, but also don't expect to get every single detail in every single reading. Keep your eye on the prize, the main ideas, the testable points, and kind of have a get in, get out mentality. Anyways, those are my points on how to read for the social sciences and the humanities. Let me know if this was helpful. Let me know if this was annoying, because it definitely was a very dry video, and I apologize for that. But if it is helpful to somebody out there, I'm glad. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!